This program is brought to you by the generous support of the Secular Society, advancing the interest of women in the arts in Virginia and beyond.
Hi, I'm Rose Martin, and this is Real Life with Susan HARF, our very favorite life coach. And like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm happy to see you, and I'm so glad that you decided to join us too. So today we're talking about the impact of AI and social media on all of us.
I like this because, you know, sometimes I can't tell when I'm looking at social media or I see something with AI to know if it's real or not.
Exactly. And I want to start off by saying today I'm thinking a lot about my parents because it's my mother's birthday today. And I was thinking about when I was talking recently with people about AI and social media, I started to think of myself kind of like my parents were when things would come on television that were new. It took them a while to get used to things. So I'm thinking about an incident that happened in my family where my father was watching Ed Sullivan and my mother was in the kitchen. He was in the den watching Ed Sullivan, and all of a sudden the Rolling Stones came on Ed Sullivan. And he saw Mick Jagger for the first time, and he yells into the kitchen, "Hey," my mother's name was Anita, "Anita, get in here, you gotta see these animals, they're on TV and they look crazy." Okay, now, I don't think that I'm that bad when it comes to accepting newness and accepting the way our society is going and the things that are new and that we need to become accustomed to.
Have you asked your children though? Have you asked
I'm
your children about that?
I'm not asking, are you kidding me, Rose? I'm not asking their opinion, no way. But the truth is, I think that I am of average intelligence and yet I am afraid sometimes of AI. So let's start out with, well, we're going to separate this from, let's talk about AI first and then social media. AI, I think, and I'll start with something positive. I think there are pros and cons, and I think there are some pros about AI. So there's no question that if you're doing research or routine tasks, let's say, AI can help you. If you look up on the computer, or if you're using your phone and you ask Siri, and of course she's using AI, you can get information quickly. There's no question about it.
I have to tell you, you know what I did at Christmas? I asked AI to look at my Christmas tree, and what else could I add to this Christmas tree to make it really pop?
Okay.
And so it did a picture for me of what I could add to my Christmas tree. Then this spring, I did the same thing with my flower pots outside. I'm like, what kind of plants would match this flower pot so that I could go to the garden center and pick the best plants? So
Rose,
I tried
you're amazing. You're fabulous. Okay, so those are ways that I think are very productive ways to use AI, and nobody's going to get hurt, and there's no problem, and you don't have to share incredible personal information about yourself that's not appropriate in order to get those answers. And similarly, AI can be really good for people, for instance, with disabilities. It can help you translate in real time. It can help people identify. There's visual systems that give you visual recognition for people who have difficulties with eye issues, with seeing. And so there are not only disabilities that it helps with, but it helps in all different ways people be more productive sometimes.
And making adaptations for them.
That's right. And I've heard people say, whether it's healthcare or education or private sector business or public sector, social services, there are things that we can do with AI to make our production quicker, our productivity better, and also, truthfully, you can do it 24/7. You can look up something, whereas we humans need time to rest. So in that way, it can be more accessible and more available.
It's a little bit of a danger if you become an internet doctor.
Yes.
You know, getting in there and trying that.
That's it. So now we're getting into the negatives. Okay, so I'm very ready to get into the things that bother me about AI. I think that even if, just what you mentioned, even if somebody has good intentions, I've seen it go wrong. So for instance, I was watching a newscast and they were explaining that there was an attorney in the courtroom who was presenting in front of a judge and cited a case as precedent, and it was clear to the judge that he got that case from AI because the judge said, excuse me, that case never occurred. That never, what you're talking about, it never occurred, never happened. And so people are referencing things that they get on AI, not to be malicious, but because they're trying to speed up their process at work, and they're getting false information
Automatically
sometimes.
assuming it's true. You know, the other thing that kind of bothers me is the ecological impact. I don't think we realize, like, where does the AI sometimes get its energy? Or is it the water in the communities with the data centers, or however it's all interconnected? And I don't think we really know. I mean, I don't know a lot about how all that is generated.
No, there's so much that's not known about that. And that's, you know, I don't even want to go, you know, we could go in a direction about how, you know, we've heard about people are concerned about AI becoming too sophisticated, taking over. I don't even want to go there. That's not my expertise. But the fact is that, yes, that's a concern. Also, along with that, it takes an incredible amount of data and sometimes personal information to get information. And then you have issues around security, you have issues around people's privacy and concerns about that. So those are also things that I think come into play and are very disconcerting. So these are things that are not malicious, but now what about the issue of fraud? Because I do think that that is a concern for a lot of people. And I think about that especially in relation to people who are not confident with the computer and or seniors who just happen upon something. And I'm not talking negatively about seniors because I am one.
Me too. I'm in the club.
I am one, but the thing is that I consider myself to be of average intelligence, but I'm going to tell you something I saw that totally baffled me. So I was on the computer, and you know how sometimes things come in your feed and you didn't ask for them, but you just see them on Instagram or whatever? I believe this was AI generated. I see a picture that is it's falsely generated of Sanjay Gupta. So he is a doctor on television, on the newscast. And they show him not only a picture of him, but his voice. And it looks like him and sounds like him. And he's speaking like he speaks. And it took me a very long time, too long, of watching and engaging to realize this was completely false. This was not true. And this does fall into the category of malicious behavior because they were selling something that absolutely was going to be junk and was not true. In this case, it was to cure dementia, okay, in probably 5 pills. So the thing is, though, is they had you watching for a long time before you were to figure out, this is not Sanjay Gupta, he is not selling this. He didn't, and it went into this whole soliloquy about how he developed this product, how he, you know, all this stuff.
Which was all fake.
It's all fake, and I think that too often, now there's just one example, too often there are things on there that people can then sign up for, get their checkbook out, start, well, and I'm dating myself with getting their checkbook out because that's not how they're going to do it. They go online and they give their personal information and possibly their social security number and all their other credentials. And suddenly now they're giving away personal information without wanting to.
Right.
And they're signing up for something that is completely going to take their money for no reason, and it's false.
We had a colleague here whose mom got into one of those and thinking, oh my gosh, look at this person's picture. They lost weight. They lost like 5 pounds in one day.
Yeah.
And then by the end of a month, it's all gone, and I need to get those pills. You know, I need to look at that and try to get that.
Exactly.
So the discernment of how to tell if it's right or if it's fake is really hard, and sometimes you don't know, and that's just the visual. But the other side of it is when people call you on the phone. And
Yes.
they're like pretending to be a grandchild, and they're just far away, and don't tell mom, or,
Exactly.
and they're getting people to go give them money or show
Exactly.
up at, a drugstore and buy cards.
Exactly.
So it's really frightening.
And it is, because I think, just like what you just said, it speaks to people's fears sometimes, and also just average concerns. Like, for instance, when you were saying about, anything to do with medication and all of that, if it's reputable, it's probably not going to be sold that way. But the other thing that I see a lot is somebody somebody talking about either makeup products or products that are going to make you look like you're not. That, like, all of a sudden you're going to buy this product and you should see what it does to you. Whether it's the foundation that I see being hawked on social media, and clearly it's AI, because they are showing you a visual pictorial of something that's not possible.
True confession, I have more hair products that I bought that way. Right.
Hello.
So I'm like, look at how that hair is
too.
not frizzy. I'm going to go ahead and order that, and I get it. Yeah. And it's
Been there, done that. I do that. Or this is the mascara that's going to be perfect for you, and it's not going to it's not going to get those things under your eyes that you have to wipe off, and the flecks and all that. This is going to be perfect. Or the foundation. This is foundation for your age.
Yeah.
It's going to look perfect. The reason why it's
no more
AI,
wrinkles.
No more wrinkles. The reason you don't, and they say you don't need a facelift. You don't need this. You just need this product.
Right.
And the thing that they're using is they're using all kinds of visual tricks, and not only lighting, but all kinds of screens that you don't see when you're looking at the person.
Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily malicious, but it's also not true.
You know what else bothers me, Susan, is the lack of using our mind. So what happens to the social interaction, the creativity, the being able to think, right? So if we're so reliant on AI to give the answers, then the whole adage of use it or lose it. But if you're not thinking a problem through, if you're not trying to talk about a solution, and you're relying on just AI, at what point in time does isolation, or like the AI friends, which aren't even real, that you can talk to them over the computer, and you're telling them your story, and it's not a real person who's just answering you back on possible solutions that you should take. That part scares me.
Very much so. And I think what you're bringing up too leads me to think about in education. So let's say, kids get an assignment. This could be your child or your grandchild. They get assignments in school, and they go to AI to write the paper. Now, I don't have a problem now I'm going to say, back in our day, we had encyclopedias. Okay, now we have the computer, and we can look online for information. However, you're absolutely right. If you go and find a sermon written for you, or a paper written for you, or an entire expose of something that you needed to be researching, I'm not saying that you're not going to get good information that could be useful and helpful, but what you're also doing, as you said, is it's thwarting the whole thinking process. And that's what concerns me. And I think now people who, like, for instance, college admissions people have told me they are very, very clued into kids who are using AI to write these personal statements.
Well, and they're also starting, the college professors, a couple of my neighbors are, and they're actually having to use AI. So they're starting the courses out with saying, okay, we're going to start this with AI, but then we're going to take this course and develop it in a way that's going to show your thinking. But I'm thinking about people my age, your age, and relying so much on AI, what that does for social isolation, or not wanting to pick up the phone and ask someone a question. You're just going to go to your phone, or you're going to go to your computer, and you're going to say, not like, what does my tree look like, or what would I look like with a different haircut? But it might be more so with these.
Can you do that, Rose?
Yeah, I did that. I also did that. Put my face in a picture, and I'm like, what would I look like with this haircut? And it was like,
you're giving me ideas, Rose.
It was me, but not me. So you can see I buy hair products. I do hair stuff. Yeah, okay. But
I'll tell you what I do in a minute.
What worries me is people who then become so reliant on something like that, and
Yes.
it's not a real person that's
Yes.
giving you advice or talking to you.
Yes.
So there's a line between having fun and exploring, and then when it becomes detrimental. But then the whole idea, like I brought up earlier, do we really know the impact of AI on so many other facets of our world? And I don't.
Well, I think suffice it to say that it has to be, the whole AI and its systems have to be monitored by human beings and have to be regulated by human beings. And so I think they're to make sure, to ensure that we don't have
Yeah.
all of these things that could go off in a different direction. I think we need to have a good handle on it. I think we need to have a handle on our kids and grandchildren who are using it, and be observant and really understand and not sort of leave it up to whatever happens. Because if it's not monitored and regulated, I think some of these issues, like we said, the fraud part, the misuse,
Yeah.
the taking advantage of people, I think all of that can increase and get worse.
Something you said at the very beginning, though, was knowing if it's right or wrong, knowing if it's true. So using your own idea to know that Sanjay Gupta wouldn't do that, or if you know a celebrity or you're following someone politically, they wouldn't do X. So it's having to think about what would really happen, and can I believe this or not believe it? And you talked about some of the social media apps earlier. It's really confusing, and yeah, I wish I did know, but to say we need to understand how it works, sometimes we just don't.
Right. So I want to now sort of move into talking more about social media. So we talked a lot about AI, and like my father said, get in here and see what's going on. All right, so now the whole concept of social media has me bothered, Rose. And I do think we should start out with the pros. Okay, so there's no question that social media helps us connect. Okay, if you don't have time to call up somebody and you don't have time for a lengthy conversation, and you see they post something that you want to comment on, let's say it's Facebook, so you comment. Okay, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything terrible about that. But I am concerned, and I do worry about the whole aspect of social media and its impact on real relationships, real conversation, and how that is not, social media is not real. It is not me getting to really know you. And it's too much information. So first and foremost, I don't need to see what anybody ate for dinner last night. I don't care. I don't care what you ate for dinner.
Right, but if someone else wants to put that picture on, then why should that bother me if they just want to put that picture on? Like, I think it's a great way that I can connect with people. If, let's say, I have friends that I haven't seen in years, and you see that someone's, excuse me, has done something, then that might trigger a phone call.
Maybe.
Or that might trigger a thing to say, hey, congratulations, it's been a long time since we've caught up, or whatever.
Maybe. But here's what I see people doing. I see people instead tuning into various influencers who are on there constantly. And some people who are influencers, for example, are talking about things they know and things they're trained to do, or things that their purview is limited. So, for instance, people who are going to talk about children's products, and they know a lot about children's products. They're a young mother, they know about children's products. Okay, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is people acting like they know you when they don't, and they're suggesting to you that this is how you should handle your mother, and this is how you should handle your boundaries, and this is what you should do when your mother-in-law calls you up and says blah, blah, blah. I see people doing that every day, all day, and they have no theoretical basis for anything they say. If you ask them, is this your opinion, or did you do research on this, or is this where your degree lies? The answer is no. They are giving, it is clearly their opinion and what they think. And unfortunately, people get sucked into that and they start listening to that, and all of a sudden that's their Bible. That is their therapist. When in fact, these people are not trained. They don't know what they're talking about. And sometimes actually I listen to these people or I watch these people and I say, oh my, I hope people don't take this advice, because it's not based in anything theoretical, which frankly, if you are going to somebody who is trained, everything they say should have a theoretical base.
So you're saying don't give a blind trust to those things that we're seeing and hearing, but I also think there's a level of personal discernment to where you look at things and say, this is a random person, I wouldn't ask for advice, so I'm not going to maybe listen to their advice. So what line is it where I look at it and I've got to be the one that says no?
What you're talking about is personal responsibility, and I think that that's exactly what we need to do. But also think about human beings and the way we are, and when we're troubled or when we're concerned, and there's somebody talking about that issue all day long. Many people are going to be interested in hearing what they have to say, whether they're right or they're wrong, and it gives them kind of some assurance and some validation, when in fact some of it is just wrong advice.
So what should we do?
Well, I think one of the things we have to be concerned about is getting in touch with how we feel and how we want to live. So for instance, these are not your true friends. You need to seek out, you need to question and ask advice from people who know you, or professionals. But also be aware that when you see people talking about their life on social media, that's not the totality of their life. They're talking about a part of their life. How many times have you seen somebody say, you need to go to this restaurant, or you need this product, or you need to buy this dress, or you need to buy this hair product, like you said, or you need to go to this restaurant. You need to go on vacation with your husband. This will do you a lot of good. Sometimes people who watch these individuals end up getting sucked in and saying to themselves, well, we can't afford to go away with our family right now, or our dining room doesn't look like this, or I just got home from work and I've got 10 minutes to make a meal and my meal didn't look like that. Too often, and because we're human beings and we're not perfect, they're not presenting their lives, their real imperfect lives. They're making you think that their lives are perfect and their children are perfect and their life is perfect. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's not. They're not showing you the down times, the wrong times, the bad times, the harmful times. And so the question is, what do we do about it? We have to self-monitor. Not easy. Things come up, as I said, in our feed that we didn't ask for. Now, sometimes things will come on. I'll be on social media, and something will come up, a comedian will come up, and I think it's the most hilarious thing ever, and I'll watch it. And it's just like watching mindless television. Of course, not our show, because it's not mindless.
Absolutely.
But sometimes we'll turn something on that we're not looking to get educated about,
right,
and we're just watching because we're relaxing and it's our downtime. There's nothing wrong with watching a comedian on Instagram who's going to make you laugh. I do that. I watched one recently where a grandmother was in a police station. It was, of course, a joke, and the parents were grilling her. Did you give them candy? Did you let them stay up too late? This is not right. And I'm laughing because I do all those things, Rose. But so the thing is, I find those things funny. But that's not what we're talking about here. There's nothing wrong. You don't need self-monitoring for watching something that's cute, funny, is going to bring you joy. But when you are looking to social media instead of having real relationships, and when you hear somebody say on social media, guys, you're really my friends. No, you're not. You're not their friend. You're not their friend.
I do believe that. It goes back to the fraud thing. If you have people who are trying to convince you to do something, and you say about the friend, it's like don't accept friend requests from people you don't know or that
Absolutely not.
that you're not in common with, because you have no idea who's really behind that picture.
Absolutely.
And it may not be anything that's real. And that's a real safety issue too.
Yeah.
Because they just think, oh, sure, friend, and pretty soon you're in a whole nother network.
So the answer to what you do is, clearly we have to self-monitor, and we have to know when to get off and when to recognize that this really isn't a real relationship in any way. But the other thing is that we also have to think about how we spend our time. And if you go, let's say, to Instagram and you're watching a couple comedians and it's funny and you're laughing, but then if you're sitting there 2 hours later,
right,
and you don't realize it, and you're saying, wow, I just kind of
wasted
2 hours when I really needed to be doing other things. That's when you need to say the self-monitoring is not working yet, and you need to at least hone in on how much time do you want to give this. Put a timer on your watch or your phone, and just say, I'm going to be done with this in 5 minutes.
And I think there's a part of it that's artificial company. So if you wake up in the morning and you're getting through social media or you're doing these other things on Instagram, it's not just like following the grandkids and seeing the pictures people posted.
Yeah.
And then it can go into the whole day, which I think also is something that when you talk about self-monitoring, to make sure that you're not doing that, because it can really take over a lot of wasted time too.
Right. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, number one, be aware of what you're looking at, what you're watching, what you're availing yourself to. And number two, do not believe everything you hear, especially when it's a quick fix or it's going to make you or turn you into something that you're not. And thirdly, rely on people who really know you. And while people say things on social media that they would never say directly to the person. My mother used to say to me, if you can't tell your mother what happened, then don't do it. But I'm going to say, if you have something important to talk about, turn to somebody who really knows you, and don't get your advice or your thoughts or anything having to do with your real life.
Susan, we've left people with a lot of things to think about and a lot of ways to think about how they use AI and social media. Great show. Thank you so much for joining both of us. And think about your own social media use and AI in your own life. I'm Rose Martin for Real Life. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
This program is brought to you by the generous support of the Secular Society, advancing the interest of women in the arts in Virginia and beyond.